Good morning, dear students. Today I will continue with the trial or the pre-trial conversation that was happening between the court and Shylock. To be precise, when I mean to say court, meaning to say Antonio, Bassanio, the Duke, jury and everybody else present in court. So here, if you remember from the last video, I had stopped at a point in the story or the play when Antonio tried to dissuade, D-I-S-S-U-A-D-E, dissuade, meaning try to stop Bassanio from reasoning or arguing with Shylock, influencing him, affecting him to change his mind. He had given all those examples from nature that it was very natural, it was inherent in Shylock to be revengeful, to be violent, to be merciless, to be fierce, to be unforgiving, to be savagery, to be unrelenting, and to be wicked as the wolf was in his example. Let us continue. Please have your books open at page 67, gentlemen. Now, what did Bassanio do immediately with this last hope that he had, which could, he thought, change Shylock's mind, because Shylock was a greedy man as far as money was concerned. He immediately offered double the amount what Antonio had borrowed on behalf of Bassanio. He said, "For thy 3,000 ducats, here is 6. He offered 6,000 ducats to please Shylock. And what did Shylock do? Shylock, that was not his main motive. His main motive was to take revenge and see Antonio dead. So it was a grave intention, it was a grave crime, in fact, which we will do when Portia comes into the scene. And Shylock says, if every ducat in 6,000 ducats were in 6 parts, and every part a ducat, I would not draw them. I would have my bond," he said. He was not willing to pay any heed. He was not willing to accept what was in offer. He said, if every ducat that Bassanio was offering, if each of those ducats were 6 in value of the ducat, if each ducat were to be 6, in other words, he meant to say that if Bassanio was to offer him 36,000 ducats in place of the 3,000 ducats, the capital amount which they had borrowed, he would not accept, he was not prepared to accept even the 36,000 ducats if it was offered to him by Bassanio. Instead, he insisted on meeting and that he be granted according to the terms of the bond, the contract that he had signed with Antonio. And according to that, he made it very clear to the court that he wanted the penalty specified, particularly mentioned in the bond that he had signed along with Antonio, and nothing more than that. He would not accept anything apart from the penalty that was mentioned in the contract which he had signed with Antonio at the time when he had lent out the 3,000 ducats to him. The Duke said, "How shalt thou hope for mercy, rendering none?" The Duke said, how would he ever hope for mercy from others to be shown to him if he was not willing, and if he did not, or if he would not show any mercy to others? Do you understand, gentlemen? Rendering means showing, giving. So the Duke asked, how would he ever hope for mercy from others if he did not show any mercy to others, or in particular in this case towards Antonio? Shylock says, what judgment shall I dread, doing no wrong? He says, why should he ever seek mercy? Why would he fear anything? And why would he need mercy when he had done nothing wrong? Why he should be dreading, fearing when he had done nothing wrong? And why would he require mercy when he had done nothing wrong? You understand? There was no need of mercy for him, as he had done nothing wrong. He made it very clear to the court, and therefore he had no fear of any kind of punishment. So, you have among you many a purchased slave. He went on to give an example to everybody present in court who were rich and who owned slaves. He went on to justify his stance again. He said that many, especially the Duke, the members of the jury, the beneficiaries who were rich and owned slaves, he said there were many people present in court who had purchased, who had spent money to buy slaves for themselves, which like your asses. And he said these slaves which they owned, they like their asses, their donkeys, their dogs and mules. They used their slaves like their donkeys, like their dogs, like their mules, with absolute, abject here meaning with absolute, disrespectful and degrading, inhuman manner, treating them with absolute disregard, with absolute disrespect, and in the most inhuman manner, and in slavish parts, and burdening them with tasks that were much below the dignity of slaves, assigning them with tasks, burdening them with tasks that were much below the dignity of even the slaves in slavish parts, because you bought them. And why did they do so? Because they had paid for them, they had bought them, they had invested in them. He went on to say next, shall I say to you? And he said, would he have the permission, and would he have Would he take the liberty, he said, to question and ask them, would they, shall I say to you, he said, with their permission, would he take the liberty to question them and ask them, would they let their slaves who they had purchased, okay, with their money, would they let them free? Would they free them? Would they allow them to marry? Would they get them married to their offsprings, to their children or heirs? Would they stop them from toiling, working hard like animals, like mules and donkeys, perspiring under the weight of the heavy duties and this degrading, disrespectful duties which they were assigned with, and which when executing, which when they did, made them sweat like animals. In other words, would they stop burdening them with labor and toil that made them feel like animals, sweat like animals, perspire? The word for animals is sweat, perspire is human beings. And he said, would he take the liberty and freedom to question them? Would those people who owned slaves in the court give them the various nutritious and delicious food to feed their appetite, to feed their slaves and satisfy their hunger? The same kind of food which they, the owners of the slaves, had, would they be kind enough to share with their slaves the delicious, nutritious food which they themselves enjoyed? Viands means the various delicious food which they enjoyed. Would they be kind enough to share with and feed their palates, feed their appetite, feed their hunger with the same delicious speciality and good food, nutritious food, delicious food which the owners who were sitting in court enjoyed? He said, if he might take the liberty to ask them, will you answer the slaves are yours? Would he take the liberty to ask them these questions? And what would be their answer? He gave the answer himself and said they would simply answer that they were the rightful owners of those slaves because they had paid for them, because they had invested for them, so they had the right to treat them in the manner in which they were treating them, like asses, like donkeys, like mules and like dogs, burdening them with heavy assignments or duties, much below even to the dignity of the slaves, making them perspire like animals, malfeeding them, mistreating them. And why? If he were to ask, then the people present in court would say that since they had paid for them, since they had invested heavily on them, they had the right to treat them the way they pleased. You will answer, the slaves are ours. The slaves belong to them because they had paid for them. So do I answer you, he said, in the same light, in the same logical explanation, in the same way what reasons they would give to him for treating their slaves in the manner which they treated, he too was producing the same reasons as his demand for that 1 pound of flesh. He had invested money by lending out the 3,000 ducats. Therefore, he rightfully and lawfully owned that 1 pound of flesh which was due to him. So I answer to you, the pound of flesh which I demand of him is dearly bought. He had paid heavily for that 1 pound of flesh. Therefore, he lawfully was the owner of that flesh, and it was no wrong for him to want that 1 pound of flesh, which I demand of him, which he said he was demanding of Antonio there in court. And if you deny me, and he again threatened the court that if the court, the jury, and the judge would deny it, fie upon the law. Shame, he said, cursing the court, that shame would be the court. Let shame fall upon the court. That the purity and reputation of the court would in that case be blemished, be tarnished, be spoilt, and shame upon the keepers of the law, those who were to deliver justice to him. They should be ashamed of themselves. There is no force in the decrees of Venice. So he said that there was no power, or there was no law or force, authority in the justice system of Venice that could prevent or stop them from granting him justice. He was not wrong. He was well within the limits of the law. Therefore, the court would have to grant and deliver justice to him. There was no force or power or authority or law within the state of Venice which could prevent him from having justice. I stand for judgment. And there he said he was present in court for judgment, demanding that the judge, the court, and the jury hold the trial of Antonio in the most just manner. And he questioned the court. Would they grant him, would they deliver him justice? That is what he ended his speech with. Then the Duke said, upon my power I may dismiss this court unless Valerio, a learned doctor, whom I have sent for to determine this, come here today. He said, with the power vested in him by the Charter of Venice, by the law of the land, with the power bestowed on him, conferred to him by the law of the land, by the Charter of Venice, he was adjourning, suspending the functioning of the court until, he said, Valerio, who he had sent for, a learned, a very highly qualified, educated lawyer, whom he had sent for to help him determine on the verdict, on the final decision in this case, be present, come to court and be present to participate in the court case. He was adjourning the functioning of the court till then, until Valerio would come and help him by participating in the case to make a decision and deliver justice as Shylock was demanding. Valerio, my lord, here stays without a messenger with letters from the doctor new come from Padua. He said, to the Duke, addressing as His Grace with respect, that there was a messenger who had just arrived with a letter which he had got from the lawyer Valerio, the prestigious, highly educated lawyer to whom the Duke had referred, would be coming to participate and help him make a decision in the case. The letter had been sent by Valerio through that messenger, and the messenger had just arrived a few moments ago, and the messenger had come from Padua. The Duke said, "Bring the letters." Call the messenger, he said, to allow the messenger to come in and bring the letter that he had come to deliver. Bassanio, good cheer, Antonio, what man, courage yet, the Jew shall have my flesh, blood, bones, and all, ere thou shalt lose for me one drop of blood. He said to Bassanio, trying to comfort, trying to motivate, trying to instill hope in Antonio, said to keep his chin up, to help him face the difficult situation and not lose hope. He tried to tell Antonio to be cheerful and not to be afraid, not to take stress, not to be despondent, not to lose hope. He must be courageous and be strong in the face of this difficulty. What man, courage, he said, encouraging him. Have courage, he said. The Jew shall have my flesh, he said. The Jew could have his flesh, his blood, his bones, and everything, his life. In fact, he was willing to sacrifice before he would allow the Jew to, means before he would allow the Jew to cause him the slightest harm of shedding one drop of blood from his body. He was willing first to die and then allow the Jew to cause any harm. He would prevent the Jew from causing any harm to him. So Antonio then says, I am a tainted wetter of the flock, meekest for death, the weakest kind of fruit drops earliest to the ground, and so let me, you cannot better be employed, Bassanio, than to live still and write my epitaph. What did he mean to say? Antonio, in a very meek, in a soft, hopeless manner, said, accepting his fate, accepting what was going to happen to him, and that he was ready to die. He said that he was the infected ram, the infected male sheep in the flock, meaning to say he was the deceased ram, the infected one in the circle of friends that he had. So he said that he was the deceased ram, the infected one, the weakest, he meant to say, and therefore he was most suitable for death, that he must die first. The weakest kind of fruit which drops earliest to the ground. As the most ripened, when a fruit ripes on the tree, on a branch, it is infected by worms and it becomes weak. It does not have the strength to hold on to the branch and falls first than which had not yet matured and which had the strength to still hold on. So he says, just like a completely matured, worm-eaten and rotten fruit does not have the strength to hold on to the branch and falls off the branch, he too, like a weak, matured, infected fruit, had no strength and was most likely to fall and decompose, die out, die in fact, in the group of friends that he had. He compared himself to be a matured, infected with worms, ripened fruit, which had no strength. He had no strength to continue fighting any longer, he said. And so he prayed to Antonio, let him face his fate and accept the consequences, which was death, that was inevitable and final. He knew that he was going to lose the case and he was going to die. Let him face the situation and let him accept death that was coming his way. You cannot be better employed. And he said that for Bassanio, he encouraged Bassanio. He said that he should have courage. He should not lose hope like him, and he be strong, continue to live on and occupy himself with the best thing, and that was he should live on. And live on for what purpose? That after his death, he write his epitaph. He write in memory of him, showing his love and respect, his opinion, his thoughts about him as a good friend. After his death, he write the inscription on his gravestone, and that would be the most purposeful reason why he needed to stay on, be strong and survive. And what was the reason for him to stay strong, survive? To be able to write the epitaph of his feeling as a friend, or his feelings as a friend for him after his death on his gravestone. So, gentlemen, with this we come to the end of what we had done in the online classes. I have done this video recording for you to refer to, follow and learn from it. It is explained lucidly, it is explained very clearly. If there is anything that you fail to understand, any terms that you have difficulties with, please do feel free to ask me. And please treat this as serious. Prepare yourselves well for the exams. Thank you, gentlemen. We will meet again in the next class.